Hi guys, another teaser for the monk has dropped today, and this one is concerning items. Pretty cool stuff in there, pretty interesting stuff. We know how the monk will be dealing damage, or at least know a little bit more. A couple of new mechanics introduced. Overall, an interesting teaser. It hasn't blown me away. There's nothing really in that I'm like, oh, you know, nothing quite like that. It's interesting. We know more about the monk. Gonna cover it all in this video. But you know, CipSoft is continuing, just kind of really trickling out the content, really teasing us without giving us all that much. So I'm still just really eagerly anticipating the test server where all of this will come together. For the time being, an interesting teaser, but nothing really overly groundbreaking. First of all, we will cover one of the two new mechanics, which is Mantra. So you've got the description prepared by CipSoft here. Basically, it's going to be an additional layer of protection similar to armor, except instead of functioning against physical protection, against physical damage, it will protect you from elemental damage, i.e. fire, ice, energy, and earth. So of those of you who don't know, the armor kind of works like a flat damage reduction. There is some RNG in there. There is like a percentage base value, but overall it functions as a flat value. So, you know, if you have 30 armor on your character, you remove about 20 physical damage from a hit, you know, flat damage. So if you have 30 armor, you get hit but for like 50, you reduce that damage by like 20 damage, so you take 30 damage instead. I hope that makes sense. This is basically what Mantra will be like. It will be flat damage reduction from the elemental damage instead of percentage reduction. Like currently, elemental damage can be reduced by like protection on your gear, like for example 5% fire protection, etc, etc. This one will be a base part of the item, like you can see in the screenshot here. An item will, instead of having like 8 armor, for example, will have 4 armor and 4 mantra. This means that the monk, at least in principle, will be stronger against elemental damage. However, CipSoft have said that because of this, the armor values of the monk will be lower on average, which means that the monk will be stronger against elemental damage, but weaker against physical damage. Now, this comes with a few considerations straight away. First of all, as a melee class, you know, you are mostly taking physical damage, you would expect. So I don't actually know if this is a worthy trade-off. This makes me think that the monk will actually be more of a kiting class rather than a boxing class. We see this from the abilities released so far as well. So this also reaffirms me in thinking that probably you will not be standing still in a box when solo hunting as a monk, because this kind of doesn't work with that either. The mantra is kind of encourages you to be sort of staying away from the melee physical attacks from the enemies, and instead to be reducing elemental damage from like the spells and abilities of the monsters. Another consideration is that majority of at least majority of all spawns in the game are mostly physical damage. Even up to this day, most spawns are physical damage. There are a few exceptions, of course, especially some of the like really end game spots, right? Like Soul War, Rotten Blood, etc., etc., where a lot more elemental damage is dealt. But you know, probably 90% of the spawns in the game are majority physical damage. So again, I don't know whether this mantra, while a relatively cool, interesting mechanic that, you know, is going to be interesting to test out, not really sure if it's going to be worth. I'm not sure whether it's going to be worth to be taking more physical damage but reduced elemental damage. Not sure. Anyway, this is a new mechanic. This is going to be on all defensive pieces of gear for the monk. So I'm guessing, you know, boots, legs, armor, helmet, they will all have a mantra value and slightly reduced armor value. So relatively interesting. I don't really think it's going to change all that much. It's probably not going to really be considered all that much in the end game, similarly to how you don't really care about your armor value these days, right? If you're level 500, you know, and your item has 16 armor or 18 armor, you don't really care. I think this is going to be similar with the mantra as well. Might be interesting in the early game. Anyway, that's one of the two new mechanics. The second new mechanic is called Elemental Bond, and this is a way how damage will be converted to a different element type for the monk. So the way this works is each weapon will have one elemental bond, and it's physical, energy, or earth, which means those are the 3 elements that the monk will have access to. And monk's spells will damage corresponding to the elemental bond of the weapon. So what this means is all your abilities, you know, the abilities that they released in the previous teaser, will deal damage of the type that the elemental bond of your weapon is. But, and this is the big difference to the EK weapons, but your melee attacks, your regular standard melee attacks, will always be physical. Okay, so it's kind of like a hybrid of a paladin, where, you know, the paladin always deals physical damage with the diamond arrows. This is how the monk will be dealing the physical damage with the melee attacks. But the spells will take on this elemental bond and be either physical, energy, or earth. So that's this new second mechanic. Kind of interesting. Kind of really not. It's not really anything mind-blowing. The elements are pretty good. They're okay. I mean, there will be some spawns that will be tough to hunt for the monk, right? We'll have to see whether monk can, for example, solo hunt something like Summer Court effectively, where you really want some access to the ice damage. Depending on the spells of the monk, maybe you just won't be using monk spells. You'll just be using avalanche runes, right? Hard to tell. Anyway, this is a new mechanic. It's called Elemental Bond. It's very similar to like EK weapons, right? Where EK weapons, the spells take on the element of the weapon, but it's a little bit different in that it doesn't alter your melee attack, right? And also the weapons are pure elemental. So for example, EK weapons will have something like 5 physical plus 45 fire, for example. Monk weapons will not have that physical part. They'll be all 100% elemental damage. So yeah, this is the second new mechanic, and now we can actually look into some of the new items. Now, I'm not going to cover every single new item that CipSoft have shown because there's not really that much point. There's a lot of filler stuff in there. They've only released like 10 to 12 new items anyway. So I'll just focus on some of the new items that actually tell us a little bit about how the monk will play and scale. So first of all, we can already see 3 items that CipSoft have shown us that have both fist fighting and magic level on their skills. Which immediately tells us that CipSoft are indeed planning to double dip from the exercise weapons, just like paladins. If you're a monk, you're going to be wanting to be burning some fist exercise weapons and exercise rods or wands to bump up that magic level. So you'll be scaling with both fist fighting and with magic level. Big money sink for CipSoft, not too surprised. Also, what most people predicted with the way the monk is supposed to be playing, right? This is not too surprising. So yeah, basically we can definitely deduce that a monk will have a magic level scaling. I expect it to be somewhat similar to a paladin. So, you know, we might end up having like a monk with like 130 fist fighting and 40 magic level in the end game, something like this. Maybe the scaling will be a bit different. Maybe you'll be able to get like 50 magic or 60 magic on the monk. But I don't think you'll be getting like a, you know, druid sorcerer level magic levels. Probably lower than that, but definitely higher than the EK. So this is the first thing we can conclude from the items that CipSoft has released. And now looking at the weapons that they've released, we can conclude a few other things. For example, first of all of the weapons that CipSoft have shown so far are two-handed. Now there is a chance that some of these may be one-handed, but I think that we can relatively safely conclude that all monk weapons will be two-handed. And they haven't shown any offhand, right? They haven't shown anything equivalent to like a quiver or a spell book or a shield for the monk. So I think, and it kind of makes sense from like a design perspective, from the lore perspective of what the monks fight like, right, with the physical weapons. It kind of makes sense that the monk will just have two-handed weapons. So that's kind of the first thing we can conclude. You know, like you can have a look. They're all like basically two-handed, right? That's the first thing that's worth mentioning and probably will influence the design of monk's items. And yeah, no offhand. So probably, for example, if you look here, you have +5 fist fighting and +2 magic level on the sanguine claws. Now this is a bit high, and this may be because of the fact that monk doesn't have an offhand, right? For example, a paladin will have a sanguine bow and also like an alicorn quiver, which gives him like a magic level and stuff. So perhaps some of the monk boosts will be a little bit higher than other vocations because they don't have an access to this offhand. Maybe. Another thing that's really important to notice is that the attack value of those weapons are low, very low when you compare to the equivalent EK weapons, which is probably the closest we have, right? This is EK and monk are probably the closest comparison point with regards to damage, items and stuff. So we can see that the monk items are much lower. Like for example, you have the new destruction two-handed weapon. It has 42 attack damage. The EK ones have like 52, 53. So we look at a 20% decrease in attack damage. Now, I'm sure there's a reason for it. At a first glance, it has me a little bit worried that they seem low, right? But I do think that there's probably a valid reason for it that we're going to find out immediately at the test server. I don't know what that reason is. Maybe damage scaling with the monk will be different. Maybe instead of just scaling with your fist and your attack, maybe there'll be some extra elements scaling with your magic level. Maybe your spells will be scaling with both fist fighting and magic level and the attack of the weapon. Maybe the monk is just so crazy strong and has so many ways to increase his damage through serenity and some of his buffs that they need to have these low attack values. I don't know, but it's interesting. I think it really does say something about that the design of the monk class will be a little bit different. On the other hand, CipSoft do like to release things a little bit underpowered and then over the course of the test server to bump them up. So it is possible that maybe they just been very, very safe to start with. They don't want to over nerf preemptively. Instead, they want to buff throughout the course of the test server. So we're going to have to see. But the values of the weapons at first glance are pretty low. And that's majority of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about and showcase, but there's just a few extra thoughts that I wanted to share based on the stuff that CipSoft has released. As I mentioned, CipSoft have released 12 items. You can go and see them if you want, but I didn't want to go into every single one of them. But there's a few thoughts, right? First of all, my overall feeling while releasing a 5th vocation to Tibia after all these years is crazy. It's really insane. CipSoft are seemingly being relatively safe with it. Now, this is probably a good thing. As someone who's really hyped and excited, it's I just want more, right? But before this teaser, I was kind of hoping maybe a holy weapon, right? Maybe an AoE melee attack. Maybe instead of, maybe it'll be cleave, right? We have cleave that's used on one weapon in the game. It's not been touched in years. Why don't we add something like that, right? Some of the theme-wise, some of these staffs and stuff, there's no reason why they can't be doing multiple attacks, right? If you have two knives in both hands, right? Why can't you be attacking 2 monsters at the same time each turn, right? Just add something interesting, something new. I was really kind of hoping for something like that, or maybe some extra range on the weapons, right? Staffs, theoretically pretty long, right? Why can't you attack from 2 distance instead of 1 distance, right? So far, it doesn't seem like CipSoft is rocking the boat all that much. They are seemingly being pretty safe, releasing basically copy-paste weapons from the EK but tweaking some of the attack values. I would have liked to see a little bit more initiative. But like I say, I suppose they are being very safe because it is already a massive change after all these years anyway. And hell, maybe they're still hiding some stuff for the test server, right? They are just trickling out a few things at a time. Maybe we'll go into the test server and there will be something crazy in there. I sure hope so. That would be really great to see. But anyway, very safe so far. Moving on, based on the items that they've released, existing quests are indeed updated as expected to have rewards matching their level. Now for the monk, so for example, I haven't got it here, but there's a Yalahari boot that CipSoft have added. So for example, you'll be able to do Yalahar quest. And if you haven't picked up your reward, you're a big winner right now, because after the monk launches, you can just go straight there and pick up the Yalahari piece. It'll definitely be worth a few KK. And actually, in fact, this is a piece of advice for any of you doing Yalahar quest now or before the monk releases. Do not get your reward. Wait until the monk releases. Pick up the Yalahar monk boots. They will be worth way more than any of the other items. And same goes for Soul War and Rotten Blood. For example, here you can see Sanguine Claws, right? Those will be added to the drop pool for Sanguine items in the Rotten Blood. And presumably this will be the case also for all other items, right? There'll probably be something dropping from Scarlet, something will be dropping from Oberon, Timira, etc, etc. There's going to be a lot of new items. I believe there's 70 new monk exclusive items being developed as part of this update. So yeah, it's just a consideration. Perhaps it's worth trying to prepare some characters, right? If you have some character which hasn't done Soul War, maybe worth doing it, but not picking up your reward until after monk launches for a chance to get that monk gear, which will be very expensive in the first few weeks after the monk release. Moving on, next point is gold token stonks. Now, we've only had 10 or 12 items released, but what's worth considering is that it will take a long time for a lot of these boss exclusive items to drop. These sort of level 200 plus drops. There is a couple of exceptions though, right? You've got the destruction weapons, which can be exchanged for 50 gold tokens. You've got the armors, which can be exchanged for 100 silver tokens, and you've got the umbrals, right? You've got the umbrals as well, which you can do. I think I have a screenshot. Yeah, here we have a crude umbral physical weapon, which will be from the umbral weapon, and we also have the nunchaku of destruction, which will be exchanged for 50 gold tokens. Now, I think this will make the price of gold tokens, silver tokens, clusters of solas really explode in the first few weeks after the monk launches, because the supply of items from bosses will not be fast enough to keep up with demand, so people will be going and opting for those guaranteed items you can just exchange at NPCs. I already expect that this Nunchunk of Destruction, very solid weapon, assuming that the 42 attack damage isn't like insanely low, assuming this is a solid weapon, this will be a very good weapon for a long time. It's got 3 imbue slots like all other destruction weapons. I'll probably be making like a tier 2, because at Nunchaku of Destruction will be a classification 2 item. I'm probably going to purchase like 6 of them for like 300 gold tokens day 1 and try and fuse them into a tier 2 Nunchaku, because this will likely be probably the best weapon, easily accessible during the first few weeks of Monk. Probably from like level 200 to 400 you'll mostly be using that, so something to consider. Those sort of guaranteed items you can get day 1, those will be very popular, and the items which will be used to exchange for them will be going up in price. And final thought, this is a small consideration for me. I'm worried that this will come and bite CipSoft in the ass in just a couple of years. So I believe that CipSoft will run out of ways to differentiate weapons very quickly. So the monk has only 3 elements, right? They have physical, energy, and earth, and seemingly they have all 2-handed weapons. Now, a knight, for example, our closest comparison, has 5 elements, right? They have access to everything. They have physical, energy, fire, ice, and earth, and they have 2 weapons for each of those elements, 1-handed and 2-handed. That's 10 different combinations, compared to only 3 combinations for the monk. And, already for the knights, it feels like they have almost every combination available. Sure, an axe EK may do with a better energy weapon with 3 imbue slots, etc., but they have, they have access to everything. Now, monk has way fewer combinations that they can have. So I do think that there will not be enough differentiation between a lot of the weapons very quickly. Sure, you might have a 45 attack earth weapon with an augment to one spell, and you might have another 46 attack earth weapon with an augment to another weapon, and they are technically different, right? But are they really, right? No one's really going to care very much about that. They're both going to be 2-handed. They're both probably going to have the same amount of imbue slots. Those are the main things that people care about. Same element. I'm worried about this. I think CipSoft, I don't know, they will probably be adding just slightly stronger and stronger versions of the same weapons, which I think is, it's a long-term problem for viability of the class, or just like excitement around the class. But we'll see. Maybe they have some new ideas. Maybe they will extend the elements that the monk has access to over time. Maybe they just figure out new ways of really making them stand out. But at this point, I'm a little bit worried about the differentiation between weapons down the line, right? It's all going to be fresh on day 1 when it releases, but next summer update, they'll need to release some weapons. The summer after that, every winter update, I think they're going to be struggling to fill out possible combinations of weapons for the monk. Anyway, don't want to drag this video on for too long. Basically, solid teaser. Again, trickled out a little bit of information, not really anything too groundbreaking. We've got this new mantra, we've got this new elemental bond. Interesting stuff. I'm mostly, honestly, at this point, just waiting to test stuff out on the test server, have access to everything. And it's going to be really exciting. Obviously, when the test server launches on Tuesday, assuming I still have an invitation to the test server, I will be making a bunch of review videos of how strong the monk is, how the gear fits in, etc. So stay tuned for that. Probably not going to be making many more monk videos until then. So I'll see you guys in a few days to talk about the monk after the test server launches. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. And make sure to let me know what you think about this teaser in the comments. And if you haven't yet, consider subscribing. Helps out the channel a lot. Thank you very much. See you in the next one. Bye bye.